I've been busy at home, Mark, putting new additions onto my gallery wall. Don't know if you know what the gallery wall is, next to my dining table. And Trump's been doing some redecoration of his own, I understand.
Well, the White House is constant redecoration, isn't it? The Rose Garden has been paved over. It's now it's now a kind of outdoor deck area, and next to it, the sort of outdoor corridor that leads from the White House to the Oval Office. 2 for Trump, of course, president twice. But guess what they got for Biden? Have you seen this?
I have seen it. The auto pen.
The auto pen. No photograph of President Biden. Instead, a framed auto pen, which for a proportion of people in America is very, very funny. For a lot of other people in America, it is deeply offensive.
Feels a little childish, perhaps.
I'm Mark Stone in New York.
And I'm Martha Kellner in Los Angeles.
And I've just got back from the UN headquarters where I've finished watching an evening speech from the UK's new Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, stepping in for Prime Minister Keir Starmer here at the General Assembly. Did we just see Britain's strongest words yet on Gaza? We'll get into that.
And on the week, the Trump administration linked Tylenol use in pregnancy and vaccines to autism. Now, Health Secretary RFK Jr. is asking whether the most common abortion drug is safe to use. Are we seeing a full-scale attack here on women's rights?
And big news just in as we prepare to record. The former director of the FBI, James Comey, has been indicted by a federal grand jury, an extraordinary escalation in President Trump's pledge to prosecute his political enemies. Justified or a dramatic shift to authoritarianism? Trump's critics are deeply alarmed. A sad and scary day for America, one top senator said this evening.
Yeah, as you said, Mark, just as we were about to start recording this podcast, huge breaking news here in America. Former FBI Director James Comey, he's been indicted on criminal charges, accused of making false statements to Congress. This comes just days after President Trump posted on Truth Social what we presume was supposed to be a private message to his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, berating her for not moving fast enough to go after his adversaries, that, quote, nothing was being done to prosecute his political enemies, and Comey was guilty as hell. This seems to be further incredibly worrying evidence that Donald Trump is using the judiciary to aggressively go after his political enemies in a manner we've never seen before in this country. The message also suggests that Pam Bondi was perhaps planning on going against Donald Trump, trying not to file these charges, but then was pressured to go against her better legal judgment. Obviously, that is speculation based on the timeline of events. Nevertheless, another deeply concerning day, especially for the political adversaries of the president.
Yeah, that Truth Social message, which, as you say, looked as though it was a private memo to his Attorney General, but that he posted publicly. I mean, how do you actually manage to do that? Was it actually intentional? Does he really not care? Does he want to make everything that he's doing literally out there in plain sight? Look, we just don't know, but it was an indication one way or another of what he wanted her to do. And now, tonight, she appears to have done just that. It is extraordinary, and it is impossible to overstate how significant it is. The cable news channels, the liberal ones over here in America, can often be pretty breathless. But tonight, their contributors have been reflecting on just how chilling they think this is. These are not normal times, I heard one contributor saying repeatedly. Meanwhile, over on Fox News, as I was getting ready to record this, they were joking about Comey going to prison. He's too tall for jail, one contributor said. Comey, incidentally, is a staggering 6'8" tall. Look, this is the first time in history that a former director of the FBI has been indicted. It's also the first time that one of Donald Trump's enemies has been criminally charged as part of his campaign to seek revenge. He's made it clear that that's what he wants to do over the investigation, in this case, as to whether there was Russian interference in the 2016 election. We're just getting details of the indictment. It was filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia. It is unusually short, less than 2 pages, 2 counts, each carrying a possible 5-year jail sentence.
Yeah, this case against Comey is focused on an exchange in Congress on September the 30th, 2020, between Comey and the questioner, Senator Ted Cruz. Comey was asked whether he had ever authorised leaks to the media, specifically leaks related to the Trump election interference investigation.
On May 3rd, 2017, in this committee, Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, "Have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?" You responded under oath, quote, "Never." He then asked you, quote, "Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton administration?" You responded again under oath, "No." Now, as you know, Mr. McCabe, who works for you, has publicly and repeatedly stated that he leaked information to the Wall Street Journal and that you were directly aware of it and that you directly authorized it. Now, what Mr. McCabe is saying and what you testified to this committee cannot both be true. One or the other is false. Who's telling the truth?
I can only speak to my testimony. I stand by what the testimony you summarized that I gave in May of 2017.
According to this indictment, Comey's statement that he made back in 2020 was false.
Yeah, so in short, he lied to Congress, and that is what they want him for. That is what they're claiming anyway. We should say that the bar for an indictment by a grand jury is very low. It is the same as being arrested on probable cause. Remember, a grand jury effectively does the job that the UK Crown Prosecution Service does. But in the case of the United States legal system, it is a group of ordinary Americans who get access to evidence and then decide whether they think there is enough evidence to indict. Comey is due to be arraigned on Thursday, October the 9th, and a trial would follow. And shortly after the announcement of the indictment, he released this statement on Instagram.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
He's expected to surrender in the morning. If he does not, then agents would be tasked with finding him and arresting him.
What a remarkable situation this is. And
really
perhaps
is.
Unsurprisingly, Comey wants to avoid that humiliation of being arrested by agents. He will turn himself in. Legal experts are already saying that this is an incredibly weak case with very little prospect, unless something else occurs, of conviction. Just a week ago, even prosecutors in that office where these charges were filed in Virginia said there's no case here, there's no prospect of a conviction. And that is potentially why this indictment is signed by just one name. In this case, it's the interim US Attorney, Lindsay Halligan. So usually with these indictments, several assistant US attorneys are listed. I think what we can glean from this is that career prosecutors are desperate to distance themselves from this case. And Lindsay Halligan, the one individual who has signed it, not exactly experienced in the field, she was installed by President Trump on Monday. Yeah, that's Monday this week, less than 4 days in the job. Just to give you an idea of her inexperience, the guy who she replaced, who was forced out by Donald Trump because he refused to go after his political enemies, he refused to go after Comey and the New York Attorney General Letitia James. He had worked on 675 cases. Halligan has worked on just 3.
Yeah, it's extraordinary stuff. You have to pinch yourself sometimes. And, you know, the amount of news, the type of news, the stuff that is coming out right now it's extraordinary. Yeah, and there's something else on this particular case, Martha, isn't there? Because the statute of limitations ends this coming Tuesday. That's 5 years between the point when Comey and Ted Cruz had that exchange on Capitol Hill, 5 years since then. So they had to do something if they wanted to. And if we're to take Donald Trump's memo to Pam Bondi at face value, he did want her to. They had to do something by Tuesday, and so they have.
I wouldn't have been surprised if Pam Bondi had gone against Donald Trump if she had have been sacked as well, because we know he's only too happy to do that when people don't follow his directions.
Yeah, and she's been on X tonight, and she says no one is above the law. Today's indictment reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. We will, she says, follow the facts of this case. The question is whether she's actually following the facts or if she's following the orders of the president. So, Martha, before all that news, all eyes were on the United Nations. Earlier this morning, we heard via video link from the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, and then right at the end of the day from the UK Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy. We'll get to Abbas in a moment. But first, Lammy, speaking on behalf of the UK government, Keir Starmer not here. A speech that was kind of in two halves, I thought. The geopolitics, Gaza, Ukraine, Sudan as well, a story and a conflict that we've covered heavily on Sky News. He focused on those three conflicts. Then he switched to the challenges and the opportunities of the future. Artificial intelligence was the thrust of his speech. A lightning strike of change, he said, a technological revolution that can only be compared to the Industrial Revolution compressed into a decade. But, Martha, it was on Gaza that I think he offered language and tone that marked, I think, a change from Britain's position hitherto.
What is happening in Gaza is indefensible. It is inhumane. It is utterly unjustifiable. And it must end now.
Incredibly strong language there from David Lammy. Also, he mentioned the catastrophic famine, in his words, that's unfolding in Gaza. Do you think he is trying to influence Donald Trump's thinking on Gaza in any way, Mark?
I think it might almost be the other way around, in that I think he is now, and other countries are now seeing that Donald Trump's position is hardening against Israel and for bringing all this to a swift conclusion. And so I think, although I'm sure the British government would never admit this, I think they feel they've got a bit more cover to be able to be more explicit about what they see happening on the ground. Because Donald Trump's language has shifted. I don't know what they've been putting in Trump's tea at the United Nations this week, but he seems to have changed position on Ukraine, on Gaza as well, kind of shape-shifting over the course of the week. On Gaza, he gave his clearest indication yet that he wants this to end, and he thinks that it will end really quite quickly. We'll see how accurate, how true that is. We've been here before. But on a key concern that Israel will try to annex parts of the West Bank, which would just make everything that much more complicated, Trump had some pretty strong words in the Oval Office late on Thursday afternoon.
I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. No, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen.
Did you speak with Netanyahu about this directly?
Yeah, but I'm not going to allow it. Whether I spoke to him or not, I did. But I'm not allowing Israel to annex the West Bank. There's been enough. It's time to stop now, okay?
You mentioned earlier, Mark, that the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas had spoken at the UN too. Obviously a historic time because this week a number of European countries, plus Canada and Australia, recognised the state of Palestine officially. Has there been a momentum shift, do you think, in the push for peace between Israel and Palestine?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there has. I mean, we've had false dawns in this conflict, but take everything that we've seen today, this week, whether it be Trump's language, whether it be Trump's meeting with the Gulf Arab leaders and other Muslim majority countries like Indonesia, a place that is suddenly very interested in how Gaza is brought to an end. I think you sort of look at the way people are talking and you feel like there is a sense of momentum. And clearly Mahmoud Abbas recognizes that. He spoke not in the chamber, but from Ramallah, from the presidential palace there. He wasn't granted a visa by America to come to New York. I've listened to countless speeches over the years by Mahmoud Abbas. Frankly, they're pretty hard to listen to. They're dense, they're complicated. He gets into the weeds on the issue of Israel-Palestine. Naturally, of course, it's a very complicated, complex issue. This time, though, I felt he needed to be concise, and he was. 89 years old, the president of the PA, distinct, remember, from Hamas. He's been president of the PA, the Palestinian Authority, since 2005. I think he recognized that he needed to be concise at this pivotal moment. He needed to hit the right buttons, and so he did. He condemned the October the 7th attacks by Hamas on Israel. He rejected all the actions of Hamas. He said they do not represent the actions of the Palestinian people and their struggle for independence. He then talked about a future beyond conflict in Gaza, and he said that the Palestinian people would bear full responsibility for the future and not Hamas. He also, Martha, resisted the temptation to criticize the American president. He could easily have done so because he didn't get the visa from Trump to come here. He also is well aware that Trump has been backing Israel throughout all this, effectively saying to Israel, you can do what you need to do in Gaza. But he chose not to criticize Trump because he realized it's clearly not in the Palestinian interests to do anything like that.
Netanyahu is at the UN for his speech in the hours ahead, and then in the White House on Monday. Plenty to watch. And I've seen various news stories, Mark, on Tony Blair potentially playing a key role on Gaza.
I was walking around the UN building this afternoon, and I met an old colleague from Al Jazeera, and he said, "Have you seen the news about Tony Blair?" And I hadn't. I said, "What?" And he said, go, just go and look it up. And in the Israeli papers, there are suggestions that Tony Blair would head a temporary administration of the Gaza Strip, initially without the direct involvement of the Palestinian Authority. Pretty remarkable stuff. Under the proposal, Blair would head a body called the Gaza International Transitional Authority, which would have a mandate to be Gaza's supreme political and legal authority for as long as 5 years.
The man who brought us the Iraq War, of course.
The very same. Look, I've spoken to a government source from a Gulf Arab nation this evening. He said to me, this is not true. I spoke to a source close to Trump, who I ran into in the UN. He said, I've not heard that one. But I've also spoken to a contact close to Tony Blair, who, interestingly, she did not steer me away from the story. Maybe she wouldn't. Maybe Blair is trying to spin this one himself to get the job. What we do know, Martha, is that Tony Blair has been working closely with Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, on a day after plan for Gaza. They've been working together for some time. Blair was, remember, the envoy for the Middle East Quartet for about a decade, trying to realize the two-state solution. He clearly failed on that one. But you do wonder, I've been thinking about this evening, you do wonder, however controversial it may be to have Tony Blair in this role, maybe it will happen. Trump would approve of it. Israel would be happy. Maybe the Gulf Arab countries would kind of just go along with it in the absence of anything better. After all, Donald Trump has had some much more extreme options, the Gaza Riviera, exporting Palestinians, and all the rest of it. Maybe in that context, Tony Blair as some sort of temporary head of a transitional authority, maybe it's not so mad after all.
Mark, earlier in the week, we obviously reported on that extraordinary press conference held by Donald Trump and his health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., in which the two men linked paracetamol, or Tylenol as it is in the US, with autism. And we had an enormous response from listeners about this topic, which we're very grateful for.
Yeah, Janine, who emailed in, raised the important point that this misinformation is terrifying for the autistic community. She says RFK Jr. has been scaremongering people like her with fake news and laughable rhetoric, and that the Tylenol announcement was an assault on autistic people, their families, and on women.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people in the autism community are grateful that there has been a spotlight shone on the condition by RFK Jr., but then, vehemently disagree with what is the demonisation of women taking painkillers in pregnancy and an entirely unproven link to autism. I said on Tuesday, Mark, that this feels like a defining moment in Donald Trump's presidency. He and his health secretary directing national health advice based on conspiracy theories and science that doesn't exist. And I think everyone's reeling from it, not least women who are currently pregnant. I've got a friend over here who is 30 weeks pregnant, and she says she's been really shaken up by the advice. She knows that Donald Trump sometimes says things that are not based in fact. But nevertheless, she said, it sows a seed in your mind. She had to take painkillers early on in her pregnancy to deal with a fever. And she's now worrying that, she may have done irreparable harm to her unborn child. And I think that is the real world effect of what Donald Trump did earlier this week. And on Thursday, we had the next development in what many are now seeing as an attack on women's rights and women's bodily autonomy. And that is that RFK Jr., he wrote to 22 attorneys general, so those are the most senior legal figures in Republican states, asking them to investigate how mifepristone, in his words, can be safely dispensed.
Yes, so mifepristone is effectively the abortion pill. It's medication that's been approved for decades to aid women ending their pregnancies safely and in the privacy of their own homes.
Yeah, and hundreds of thousands of women use mifepristone every year. A little while ago, I spoke to Dr. Anna Escamani. She is a Democrat representative in the state of Florida. Before that, she worked for Planned Parenthood, which is a major pro-choice organisation here in the US. I firstly asked her if there is anything to suggest that mifepristone wasn't being safely dispensed.
No, there's absolutely no evidence. I mean, mifepristone is safe, effective, and essential and has been for decades. And we've seen different conservative states and attorney generals, and now the president of the United States and his administration make efforts to take away what has been an essential access to abortion for hundreds and thousands of women across this country. And in fact, with abortion bans taking place state by state, we know that based on some data, more than 60% of all abortions in the health system here in this country are accessed through mifepristone. And remember, this is early in one's pregnancy. And so when we can help ensure that women can make this personal decision proactively without delay through an option like mifepristone, they're also able to access this resource early on in their pregnancy, which makes the experience much easier for women across the country.
Is this about safety then, Congresswoman, or is it about further controlling women's bodies?
It's never been about safety. For generations, anti-abortion politicians have banned reproductive health under the banner of safety. And yet the data shows us time and time again that abortion access in this country is incredibly safe, especially in states where it's legal. And if anything, when you attempt to ban abortion, not only are you not ending abortion, but you're forcing women to make potentially risky decisions. But because technology has advanced so much, abortion medication is saving lives, because if women could not access mifepristone the way they are today, they would turn to unsafe ways to end a pregnancy. And that is what keeps me up at night. At the end of the day, we need to trust women to make decisions for their health and their futures. And this continuation of attacking mifepristone is part of a decades-long effort by extremists to take away our bodily autonomy and take away our freedoms. And it's so important to know that the Trump campaign, that President Trump pledged that he would leave abortion alone and leave it to the states. And so this is another example of President Trump lying to the American people, lying to women across this country. And we're going to do everything we can to fight back.
We obviously saw the announcement this week. We saw the announcement this week from the president and RFK Jr. that they're advising women not to take Tylenol during pregnancy and instead to tough it out if they can. Does that tie in to this, this investigation into mifepristone? Are the two things linked?
Absolutely. And not just that, but where I am here in Florida, our Surgeon General and our governor are working to remove vaccine requirements for school-age children. And so whether it is spreading misinformation about vaccines or spreading misinformation about Tylenol, or now spreading misinformation about the safety of mifepristone, it's a continuation of confusing everyday people, of letting women be in pain, of forcing women to stay pregnant, and then pushing women to not protect their children. It's diabolical. It doesn't make any sense, and it smacks right in the face of science and medicine. And I'm very fortunate to work alongside so many medical experts that are helping to hold the line and push back on this. But it's very difficult when you're trying to ensure the health and safety of your constituents, but have to constantly combat misinformation by one of the most powerful men in America.
Yeah, really interesting to hear from her, Martha. A lot of those states, the 22 states, already have very tight abortion restrictions since Roe versus Wade was overturned. And so some have no abortion clinics at all. So I guess medication abortion was the only option for many people.
Yeah, for many women, Mark, mifepristone is a lifeline. They can have video visits with healthcare professionals and have mifepristone prescribed to them, which means that they are able to terminate their pregnancies for whatever reason. And there are a whole host of reasons for ending a pregnancy. And I think, this and Tylenol coming in the same week has meant it feels like a very scary time for women in this country. Add to all this announcements like the one in Florida the other week, where the Surgeon General there announced an end to compulsory vaccines for children. It's increasingly frightening for women who feel they don't have autonomy over their own bodies and that their children's health is being put at risk.
Yeah, just a side note on this, Martha. I've been struck at how quickly the UK seems to be mimicking Trump's America in certain quarters. Nigel Farage, head of the Reform Party, on LBC on Wednesday, refusing to reject Trump's misinformation, which links paracetamol to autism. That was interesting. But did you hear also the one about the carp and the swans? They're eating the carp and the swans, apparently. Does that remind you of anything?
Uncanny, reading from the same script.
Exactly. Remember, Springfield, Ohio. They're eating the cats and the dogs, so said Donald Trump.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
He was, of course, referring to Haitian migrants in Springfield who he thought were eating cats and dogs. We went to Springfield whenever it was, 18 months ago or so. They were not eating the cats and the dogs. And according to Britain's Royal Parks Police, neither are migrants in Britain eating the carp and the swans. It's cobblers. Just very quickly, Martha, in the tsunami of James Comey and that story, did you see that Trump had thrown in some new tariffs?
Yeah, I did. Bad news for people doing house renovations, I understand.
Quite random, I thought. 100% on imported branded drugs. I mean, that's like big news if you are in the pharmaceutical industry. 25% tariffs on all heavy-duty trucks coming from elsewhere in the world. And this is the one that surprised me. 50% tariffs on kitchen cabinets. What's
They're
that all
already
about?
expensive enough as well, kitchen cabinets. He's clearly never had to redo his kitchen.
Yeah, but he's redoing the White House. Maybe he's going to redo the White House kitchen. Anyway, we'll have more on tariffs next week, I am sure.
Thank you so much for listening today. Plenty to get through. And please do continue sending your emails over to us on trump100@sky.uk.
Yeah, have a great weekend. I will be back in DC. Have a great weekend. I'll be back in DC, I assume, although who knows where this roller coaster will take me. You'll be in LA and we'll be back in your feeds on Tuesday. Bye-bye for now.
See you then.